Thank you very much, Nobue, and it's an honor to be here in Tokyo with Professor Hamada, who, as we all know, is an advisor to Mr. Abe and the Japanese government. In answer to your question, Japanese success in the 21st century, it begs the question of what the Japanese mean by success. How will success be defined for Japan in the 21st century? Those of us in business and economics tend to think of success being defined in those terms. But of course, success can be defined in terms of quality of life and the happiness of citizens. It can be defined in terms of security and global prominence. It can be defined in many ways. But let me just start with the areas that I know a little bit about, the economics and business arenas. I was very encouraged by the election of Prime Minister Abe, and I particularly appreciated his ability to encapsulate for Japanese people, but also for the global community, the three arrows of Abenomics. Often those of us in the economics arena find it very difficult to articulate economic issues in ways that ordinary citizens can understand. And so I think his approach to singling out these three particular thrusts of his policy that was very, very intelligent. But at the same time, of course, it means that it's very easy to pick apart whether or not the government has succeeded in delivering against its objectives on each of these three issues. And I think we all know that there is perhaps one of the three arrows that has not been fully achieved at this point. And I'm sure Professor Hamada will have some comments about that. But I think more broadly, there are two big problems that Japan faces. One is the demography of the population, the aging of the population. It's very difficult to achieve growth when your population is not growing. And especially when you are dealing with an aging population, the fact of the matter is that older people don't spend as freely and don't spend as much on things, on goods and services as younger people do. They tend to hoard cash, and even if the government support system in social services and healthcare is strong and well appreciated, nevertheless, that still doesn't necessarily give them the assurance or the incentive to go out and spend their money on goods and services. I think a second problem in Japan is that where you don't have a growing population, you don't have so much pressure on the infrastructure. Now, of course, Japan is a relatively small country geographically relative to its total population. And there is already a wonderfully well-developed infrastructure in Japan. All of us in America are very envious, of course, of the high-speed Japanese trains and so forth that we are all very pleased to take when we are on our way to and from Osaka and so on. The thing is that there aren't so many enormously big and important infrastructure projects of a traditional nature left in Japan for investment to take place in. Where there are opportunities, though, is in the area of telecoms and other elements of infrastructure that are not what we traditionally think of in terms of bridges and roads and so forth, but dealing with the communications infrastructure which can improve the productivity of Japanese citizens and the Japanese economy. And of course, there's tremendous opportunity for additional innovation in those areas. But I think my point here is that it's easy to say to the government of Japan, please increase consumption, please increase investment, but we must understand the structural challenges of the Japanese economy, I'm sure there are many smart people in Japan who know exactly what should be done, but the structural elements of the economy sometimes get in the way of a quick result. Now, another key challenge in Japan, coming to the business context, another key challenge in Japan is, in my opinion, the relative strength or weakness of Japanese business. I remember in the 1980s that we in America were very attentive to the success of the Japanese manufacturing system and to all of the wonderful innovations that Toyota and many other companies created in manufacturing processes. In fact, many people in Western Europe and the United States were quite afraid of Japan at that time and worked very hard to adopt those excellent practices in our own industries. What I see since that time is a lack of continuous innovation on the part of Japanese business. Of course, one cannot detract from the great innovations of the 80s and the 70s in terms of manufacturing. But what about the 90s and the 2000s? We came to expect a lot from Japan in terms of business process innovation and also technical innovation. But we have not necessarily been as excited in the last 20 years as we were in the 20 years beforehand. And I feel very sad about that because I, like many other people in the United States, love Japan, love coming to Japan, and hope to enjoy many things that are invented in Japan. But I wonder why we have not seen so much inventiveness in the last 20 years. And it's almost as though there is a vicious cycle here. And perhaps I make a slightly embarrassing comment. I hope no one will be offended. But I feel as though Japan and Japanese people are very conscious of the fact that they have not done so well in the last 20 years, and that they are sometimes embarrassed by this and actually become more inward-looking, become more introverted, and less willing to go out into the world and explore the opportunities that exist internationally. Of course, there are some great companies like Toyota and the other leading car companies like Honda that are doing still an exceptional job to represent the image and innovativeness of Japan around the world. But I looked recently at the latest list of the 100 most valuable brands in the world in 2015. And to my surprise, for the third largest economy in the world, there are only 7 Japanese brands on this list out of the 100 total brands. There are, I think, 55 American brands on this list. There are also a few Chinese brands as well that have now come forward. But I think when I look at the rankings of the companies on this list, most of those companies are slipping from one year to the next in the rankings. Toyota still remains the strongest Japanese brand internationally. It's ranked number 7 most valuable brand. But 5 of the top 7 brands are car brands, and the other 2 are Sony and Canon that have both slipped remarkably badly in the last 10 years. And so the image of Japanese business internationally is really all concentrated around its success in the automobile sector. And I just want to make this point to Japanese people because we always talk in business and economics about the importance and value of diversification. But if the Japanese image is very much a function of what happens in the automobile industry, given the potential technical advances in electrical and other non-carbon fuel-based automobiles, there could be disruptive technologies that come into play that could upset the Japanese leadership in that industry on which it is now so dependent for export earnings and for its international image. The last point I would like to make, if you will permit me, is on the issue of corporate governance. I am really quite disappointed, I have to say, with the lack of progress in this area in Japan. I think many Japanese people whom I meet with are just wonderful, outstanding business people who have the ability and the competence to be very strong on the international stage. And they should not be afraid of having open, transparent, and very well structured corporate governance with a much higher proportion of independent directors in the boardrooms of Japanese companies. It is not ever going to be enough in the 21st century for any Japanese company to rely solely on the Japanese domestic market for growth. Every Japanese company is going to have to be sensitive to embracing the international challenges that international markets offer. And one way that's very important to do that successfully is to have a diversity of opinion in the boardroom and to have international perspectives, not just domestic perspectives, governing Japanese corporations. So I really hope that some of the recent unfortunate public scandals around some Japanese companies have the effect of galvanizing more Japanese business leaders to understand the importance of them going out of Japan and understanding international consumers, but also in their boardroom deliberations embracing international points of view from independent directors who are not part of the Japanese traditional insider group. So perhaps I have made enough introductory comments, I hope, for Professor Hamada to pick up on some of these points, and I very much look forward to hearing his very thoughtful opinions. Thank you.